Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Insanity Check with Dr. Anita. I am your host, Dr. Anita Polite Wilson, and I am thrilled again to be joined by my co-contributors, Eloy Garcia, Adrian Pastor, and Sade Perry. Crew, how we doing?
Good.
Good. Char's all blinged up and ready for the holidays. I thought I was going to come in here all fancy. She just got like the whole jacket going on. I love it. I
Just a
love it. I love
dash.
it.
Just a dash.
I can't wait to see what you're going to wear for the next show because that's just like, I think I might need glasses for the next one. So, did everybody have a good week this week?
Yes,
You
it
know you
was.
didn't. I'm looking at your faces. You did not. Who are you trying to tell? Come on now.
Finals are coming up, so I just feel like the stress level is just, a little high,
Yes,
but we're that close, that much closer. So,
that's the attitude to have. Eloy, what's going on with you?
I share that sentiment with Shar also. Finals are rolling in. We have projects that we have to turn in. There's a new platform that the university is using to verify like a senior project. So, a lot's coming at us at the end of the semester, but hey, we're about a week away now.
That's it. And then you can breathe.
Yes.
Adrian, how about you, my dear?
It's just one of those weeks. Every now and then there's some stuff rolls around, but you just roll with it. So we're just rolling with it, making it happen, and making the best of it.
That's all we can do. What was crazy for me this week, it seemed like um, with almost everyone, there was vacation. Oh, have you ever had one of those weeks where you just like, you would just be better to just kind of not show up or just show up and just mime all day long because everything is like taken out of, okay, it's not just me. All right, good. I'm not the only one. I'm not crazy about that this week. All right. So now that we got all that out of the way and level set, we are talking about 2020 in review. And typically those shows happen, like for New Year's, and they go back to bloopers and funny things. This year was not a whole bunch of bloopers and funny things. So what I want to do is kind of go around the circle and talk about the three things that you thought were the most crazy this year. And we're just going to kind of see where the conversation goes. And for our next show, we're going to talk about how we deal with a new level of crazy from 2020 to 2021. What did we learn that we can use to help us cope better? So we're going to first start off with what we felt was most crazy in 2020. And I will say my top three were actually seeing a man murdered by an officer on TV and never flinch, even though there were witnesses around. That was my number one crazy. My number two crazy is the fact that even though we've got videos coming in from doctors and nurses about the pandemic, that people still seem to think is not real. And now I'm not even talking about your political persuasion. People are just saying that it's not real. That's crazy number two. And crazy number three is the fact that this year has started and ended so dramatically different for me, both personally and professionally. So those are my three. Shar, what are the three for you?
well, I think this kind of reflects in your world, what's important to you and whatnot. So I think the first thing that I thought of was the mental health repercussions of COVID-19. I think this year has proved that we as a nation have a lot of internal work reflection to do. I think the fact that people are struggling with the social distancing and the stay-at-home orders so much that it's brought to light so many other things that we as a country need to work on. And I feel like it's highlighted mental health and it's brought more awareness. And I'm hoping this is the beginning of the discussion. I mean, it's been an ongoing discussion, but I'm hoping this is a pivotal moment in the discussion. Another thing that's been kind of translated from my world is the Employment Non-Discriminative Act. This was passed June 15, and it essentially states that an employer cannot fire its employees based on their sexual orientation or their gender identity. And I feel like this is monumental in my world. First off, I'm an African American woman, so the fact that I'm granted rights in general has been a mountain overcome. And then you take in the fact that I'm a lesbian woman, and now we're getting this recognition and this protection, and it's just like, this is huge in the midst of all of the sadness, all of the the differences and things between people. The fact that we're getting this protection is something that we should be focusing on, something that we should be acknowledging in the midst of all of this despair. Another thing that I feel like kind of changed my year, my perspective, and you kind of touched on that, was the Black Lives Matter movement. And for me, it was such a big deal because it started all these conversations that I'm having with other people, that I'm having with strangers, I'm having with people that I know and I love. We're finally talking about this subject that's been so taboo. This year has just been transformational in so many ways.
You know, in my work in diversity, inclusion, and belonging, right now I'm working with a client and we're focusing specifically on Black lives because that's where the pain point is right now in that particular company. But when we just talk about diversity, inclusion, and belonging, it is work, it is emotional, it is challenging, it is psychological, it is challenging, it's rewarding, and it's work that still needs to take place. And what I find really interesting is the fact that it seems like the struggle for Black people in particular has not changed much since the days of Dr. King. And I just wonder, you know, we always say that the rising tide lifts all boats, but it seems like for whatever reason, the boats that Black folks are in still have not risen very much. So I hear that and I feel that, you know, and then when you consider the other challenges that just being people bring to the table, in addition to if you're Black or Latinx or, you know, whatever other persuasion that you identify with, it's just more complicated than it needs to be, I think, sometimes. Eloy, what do you think?
Yeah, so the three for me are the lack of teamwork around COVID prevention and people still refusing to wear their masks. It's really mind-boggling to me. I think that mask wearing is probably the minimum that you can do to protect yourself, you know, because that's like Shar was saying, stay-at-home orders have been received differently by everyone. So there are people that are still going out, still meeting, you know, with their friends, with their family. So the least you can do is wear a mask. And the fact that so many people are still fighting against that really, you know, blows my mind. And, you know, the sheriff for the county of Riverside has continuously come out to say that he's not going to enforce mask wearing laws. And that is so stressful. And I see, you know, people on social media and people are online that are just praising him for his quote unquote bravery. And that just blows my mind because when it hits you and it hits your home, you know, and if you're not taking care of yourself, it's like you only have yourself to blame. And I know that sounds a certain type of way, but it's the truth. You know, that is stressing me out a lot recently. The second for me is that we've yet to receive additional financial assistance from the federal government for people, for the tens of people that are unemployed, that became unemployed because of this pandemic. And it almost seems like they're trying to wait out. This is how I feel. It almost seems like they're trying to wait it out and see and wait for things to quote unquote go back to normal financially. But as we've seen, that's not going to happen. You know, it's not going to happen anytime soon. And I feel like it's really disheartening because a lot of people are left out in the cold, literally, and it's difficult to see that things are going to get better individually or for specific families if there isn't any additional help. So that's also been, you know, stressful. And the third one more personally has been, you know, virtual education and virtual graduation, you know, graduating in the spring with my undergrad. And I didn't ever think that I would be graduating at home, you know, or I always thought it'd be this grand, you know, moment that all of the blood, sweat, and tears, all of the sleepless nights, all of the wonderful relationships that we've established would be celebrated in a very specific way because it's what we've been used to. So before I told myself I was okay with it, but I think, you know, like Shar, we were talking yesterday and she said kind of out of sight, out of mind. That worked, but now that it's creeping up on me, I'm kind of stressing out. And the last point about higher ed is that we're still as students paying full tuition for partial education. So it's kind of just trying to mediate these three stresses in ways that don't become so overwhelming. But these have been my top three.
Yeah, I totally hear you on that. It's a shame that you won't be able to have your, physical graduation where you actually get to march across the stage and have your, diploma in hand. And yeah, and I agree with you. That's crazy. Why are you still charging me and I'm not even there? That's just, oh yeah, really? All right. Adrian, what's up for you? What are your three crazies for this year?
There are so many crazies. It feels like it's almost hard to limit it to just three because the year has been taking us to hell and back. But um, for me personally, the first thing that comes to mind, and we've all kind of covered this in our own way, is relations to COVID-19. For me, it's the politicization of a pandemic. I I don't understand why so many people have made things like mask wearing, like you said, Eloy, or just the situation as a whole into a political situation when it's really just a situation of our health. It's a situation of public health. It's a situation of safety for everyone. Mask wearing, as simple as it is just it's a sign of respect. And I think a lot of people fail to realize that. And when you throw politics into it, it makes it this whole other mess and whole other monster, which I think too is keeping us in the situation that we're in, where almost a year now, things are worse than they were at the beginning. And so that to me is just absolutely crazy. It blows my mind that we're still here. Second thing that comes to mind is, for me personally, our new Supreme Court justice, I'm not a really big fan of. Being that she is such an inexperienced person, I'm talking about Amy Coney Barrett. To me, it was crazy to me that someone who is so inexperienced is elected Supreme Court justice, especially after Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We had, may she rest in peace. It is just I expected much more than what we were given, and so all we can do now is just hope and look to the future with hope, hoping that she can carry the torch in a way that is respectful to our country and respectful to um, those who have come before her. Um, yeah, it's not a personal thing that I'm too crazy about. And my last thing that I think is crazy is just I have to agree with Charday, just like personal mental health, the way that for me, so much of mental health is being able to reconvene with those around you and being able to have community. And a lot of that to so many people means face to face interaction, whether you're seeing a therapist, whether you're seeing family or a group of friends. That to me is such a healing thing. And so to be able to not get to see those people that I love for me is making me feel kind of crazy. And I felt like this at the beginning, and then as the pandemic sort of went on, it kind of went on and off. I was doing okay being inside, and then I wasn't. But I think now I'm just at a point where I'm kind of fed up.
Mm,
I really miss being able to go about my life as it was before. And to some people, it may sound kind of pitiful. I know we all are going through this. It's not just a me thing for sure, but I'm feeling it today, and I've been feeling it recently, and it's frustrating, and it definitely affects your mental health. It definitely affects your mental well-being, and it's just been tough navigating that, being by yourself, and not being able to reflect with those that you love face to face, and being like a physical touch, like loving person. That's not really something I'm too keen on. So it's definitely making me feel a little bit crazy at times.
yeah.
But with that said, we're going through it. We're making it happen. Look at us here
Mhm.
today. We're on the call. We're still doing the thing. It is difficult.
Yeah, it is. I hear the theme that we all have in common is this pandemic and all of the craziness associated with the craziness of the pandemic. So let's talk about that for a little bit. Um, I was talking with a neighbor yesterday. She's actually a nurse. And I asked her, I said, okay, you're on the front lines. Tell me what is really going on because, you know, mask wearing is such a political statement, and the media tells us so many thousands of people are dying, and we definitely don't want that. But at the same time, when you look at the number of deaths in comparison to the number of people that are in America, is the media overblowing and creating havoc and turmoil where it's not necessary? And she said, yeah, she said, while the death rate is high and while there are things that we could do to control it, such as simple things like wearing masks and keeping your distance, simple things that anyone should be able to do, she said, in the grand scheme of things, it's maybe just a super bad flu, because she said people that are coming in that are struggling are not necessarily what we would consider healthy people. They are, for by and large, for the most part, people with underlying conditions. So where do we find the truth in all of this to help us self-manage? We can't continue to shut down people's livelihoods, because as a nation, we can't continue to just print money willy-nilly. And if we do, who's ultimately responsible for that? The people that you're printing money for that don't have the money to begin with. I mean, the whole thing is just a circular loop of craziness. Where's the truth lie in all of this, and how do we go forward, as a world? Forget just the United States. How do we go forward as a world? And then when I connect that back to our last show where we talked about that book where the author is claiming that we need to put our faith in humanity. Okay, if we put our faith in humanity, but half of humanity doesn't want to take the simple steps to do what it would take to get us out of this, it's just a never end cycle of crazy. So somebody give me some feedback.
I was just thinking about the last discussion we had in that book. And I was thinking, there's a 10% that doesn't want to wear the mask, that doesn't want to stay inside, that doesn't even want to wash their hands, for being frank. And then we have the 10% that's just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to look. I don't know who to believe. And then we have we have the 80% that feels like they're kind of lost and they don't know what to do. And then we've got the 10% that is kind of leading. And I'll even break that in half. I'll say the 5% is the leading and the 5% is media. Because this is where we're looking to get our information. This is where we're looking to get what's the next step. And I feel like with COVID, we've learned the most important thing that you can do for yourself and for others is to protect yourself. And I think I'll go outside. I'll go to the store if all I have to do is wear a mask and I'm safe and then others are safe. I'll wash my hands. I'll limit the things that I'll do. I'll think about the people that are around me. I don't think that's asking for much. I really don't. And I feel like we can survive this. We can do this. And I think if you utilize your resources, you don't go to Google and look at Wikipedia for a factual thing. You go to a .org, you go to a .net, a .edu. Be smart about the knowledge that you're getting. Don't limit it to one thing. Don't just watch the news, because they're going to have one perception that they're feeding to you. Read articles, talk to people. There's so many other things you can do to be informed that give you more of a direction of, hey, what should I listen to? Where should I go? I think it's great that you spoke to a nurse, someone who's in that realm and in that world that can give you some firsthand, this is what we're doing, this is how I feel about it. That's someone that I would trust.
Yeah, it's tough because we want to think that we're being responsible when we look at the sources that we look at. But at the same time, we need to remember the sources that we look at. And this is something else that I found fascinating and crazy, is the fact that social media is designed to feed you what it is that you eat. So if you're of this mental persuasion or this political persuasion, that's what you're going to get. So if you think that you're getting balanced information, you are not. Social media is feeding you the things that you tend to go toward. So when we think about that, Eloy, how are we supposed to, make sure that we're keeping ourselves educated with objective information when the places that we tend to go, because we trust them, because we feel they're safe, because they really tell us what we want to hear, may not be necessarily telling us what we need to hear and giving us balanced perspectives?
Yeah, that's a great question. If I'm honest, I've been staying off of social media for like months and months now. Most of this year, I've been off of social media, particularly Facebook. Facebook is one of the sites that I trust the least because I see the algorithms working the most in the way that you're saying, reinforcing information that we already want to know, that we already think is factual, but also allowing information that is blatantly false to be spread. So I really, really encourage people not to engage with social media as it pertains to finding out information about the virus, about the election, about important situations, important things that we're going through. If you want to put up your pictures about the dinner you made, that's great. You want to put a picture up of your Christmas tree, that is awesome. Just don't engage with the social media in a way where you're gaining and then retaining information that's connected to this virus. So, like Char's been saying, I've been accessing other pieces of information that are going to challenge what we've been hearing so that, like you've said, Dr. A, many times, is we can get a nuanced perspective, a well-rounded perspective. I'm really challenging myself not to just engage with content that I already know, that's going to feed me, the dinner I'm asking for. Exactly. So even if that's, listening to podcasts called like Science Versus, where they come out with episodes that challenge a perspective that we have and then put it up against the science. And they just came out with an episode on the vaccines, so I listen to that and then actually get the information behind the statistics that we're hearing so that we have context, and that so I can have a better idea of, the studies that were done, how it worked out, the side effects that did, happen after, and really doing my best to get more of that knowledge from people that are on the front lines. Like Shar said, it's really, really fortunate that you were able to speak with the nurse and get that direct information, because that is what we should believe more than anything, because she's there. She's
Mhm.
dealing with it day to day. So I'm trying to get as close as I can to that perspective so that I can, calm the crazy that
Mhm.
coming from watching the news, even for like 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Context is huge. We really ought to be thinking in terms of, do I have enough information, objective information, to have a well-rounded perspective on what's going on? And I got to tell you, she even said to me that she was observing a doctor who was treating a patient, and he didn't have on an N95 mask. He had on, I guess, common people's mask, for lack of a better word. And, she kind of rapped on the door and said, "Do you want me to bring you a mask?" And he said, "No." So she went to another doctor and she said, "I've noticed this one particular doctor isn't too concerned about an N95 mask. What do you guys know that we don't know? How serious is this thing?" And the other doctor said, if you're healthy and if you're not going to be in front of someone for more than a couple of minutes, you're okay to have a mask on. Doesn't necessarily have to be an N95 mask, but it really is about the condition in which you encounter this disease that's going to determine, how it responds within your body. Now I said, well, what about, the young healthy people that are getting it? She said, well, it's like anything, you're susceptible to it, but the ones who are most likely to be susceptible to it have these certain conditions. And she said, if we were more clear on who is really most likely to suffer the most from this versus someone who might, for instance, folks are walking around asymptomatic and have it but don't know it. Well, what do we do with that? Again, there's so much crazy around this. But to Adrian's point, and to tie it back to what you're saying, Eloy, about staying off the social media, I haven't been on it in months for that very reason. Number one, I'm tired of getting it. I mean, you turn on the TV and that's always the lead story. And while I absolutely want to be informed, I'm also fatigued. And so, to your point of staying off of social media and making sure, to Shar's point, that we're getting our information from reputable resources. Adrian, for someone like you, I'm missing people. I miss being with my clients. I miss being on site and interacting with folks. So how are you getting that social interaction that doesn't necessarily require being on social media? Because, Facebook was initially formed so that people could have that sense of community, but right now that doesn't necessarily seem to be the best place for us to get that sense of community. So Adrian, what are you doing for your own, need for contact and feeling a sense of belonging that doesn't include social media that the rest of us could benefit from?
I'm going to be completely frank. I really struggle with that. I completely struggle with that. And I find myself on social media a lot. and it's something that I'm definitely learning that is not super beneficial for me. It's not as healthy as a practice as I think it might be. And I'm young, and like social media is easily accessible, and it's something that to me feels like the easiest way that I can get in contact with those around me. And I'm starting to realize that it kind of drives a like a wedge between people in ways that I didn't understand before. And so truthfully, right now, I'm not 100% sure, and I'm kind of navigating that in my own way personally. I'm trying to figure out, what are responsible ways that I can still maintain that sense of community, but um, maintain it in an authentic way that feels good to me. It feels strange. It feels strange, DMing my friends and messaging them, and not getting to have that. It's not the same kind of connection that I am used to. So truthfully, I'm not too sure. And I think we're all kind of doing it in our own way, whether it's via Zoom, whether it's via FaceTime, or, something that is accessible to you. I wish I had that answer, because I'm still struggling with it myself. And so it's definitely something I want to work on in the next coming year. There's a lot of, for me, I feel a lot of guilt in relation to not being able to see those around me. I feel a lot of, like frustration about it, and it's a whole set of feelings that is difficult to navigate.
Yeah. Adrian, I just want to say thank you and honor you for your transparency, because too many people are walking around here pretending that it's okay, and they're not okay, and they don't know how to cope, and they don't know how to say they don't know how to cope without people misinterpreting that as weakness. So I want to thank you for having the courage and the strength to just be real. I mean, every show we have is about keeping it real, and people need to know that they're not the only one. The other day I reached out to someone who has said in the past, they're struggling. It's someone that I highly respect. He's been amazing in the personal and professional space. He was very intimately involved with Strengths Finders. Don't know how many of you are familiar with Strengths Finders, but he's very intimately involved in that. And he said he's struggling. And the other day, as I was out on my walk, it hit me that I'm struggling. So I reached out to him and I sent him a text. I said, "Hey, just wanted you to know I'm struggling. It's not just you. We all do." And I remember being on LinkedIn not too much, or not too long ago. I'm thinking not too much because I'm thinking about Eloy saying, "Get off social media." And I know you're not saying get off it altogether, but yeah, we can do too much of it. And I remember seeing a post that said, "Check on your strong friends," right? Check on your strong friends. People consider me as strong. Check on me, folks, right? What makes me strong is setting my stuff aside to be able to be there for someone else. But after I've been there and helped someone else, I got to go back and pick up my own stuff. And sometimes I'm not that strong. So, again, I just want to thank you for sharing. I think that that's probably a good place to end today's show, because in our next show, we're going to be talking about what is it that helped us get this far through 2020 that we can carry into 2021 and possibly come up with some new techniques. um, I am so excited to be sharing with everyone one of my secret weapons for earlier in 2020, which was a marriage and family therapist whom I went to for talk therapy. It was amazing. I don't want to tell you too much because we're going to get into that into the next show. And I really don't want to take anything away from the Real Conversations with Dr. Nita podcast that I'm going to have with my guest. But just talking stuff out, sometimes that's all we can do. Sometimes that's all we need to do. And sometimes that's all the best that we can do. So I want to thank my co-contributors. This is a very different 2020 year in review. We're not talking about bloopers and who wore what and who broke up with what and what's the color for, this year. We're not talking about those things. We're talking about what the heck was crazy about 2020. And if I had a runner up, and then we'll stop after this. If I had a runner up, it would be someone who says, in essence, now remember, we stay away from politics, right? But if I had a runner up, it'd be someone who says, if I win, it's official, and if I lose, it's rigged. That is just, I'm sorry, I wasn't going to go there, but that's just crazy to me. That just brings me a belly laugh every time I think about it. So, we're going to stop there. I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Again, this is Dr. Nita reminding you to stay blessed and keep it real. Crew, I look forward to the next show. See you soon.